Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome to What She Said, the heartbeat of Canadian women's voices, with me, your host, Candace Sampson. Here, we dive deep into the raw, unfiltered stories and triumphs of women from coast to coast. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement where empowerment and education collide and where mansplaining is shown the door. We're here to celebrate, uplift, and echo you. So get cozy, tune in, and let's embark on this journey together, exploring the rich tapestry of women's lives, their battles and victories, right here on What She Said. As we dive into the dog days of summer, it's evident that for Canadians, this time of year holds a special allure. Despite economic challenges like inflation and high interest rates, an impressive 61% of us are gearing up for summer vacations, according to a recent Ipsos poll for Alliance Global Assistance Canada. Even more, 79% in fact are eager to get away, though many are tweaking their plans to accommodate tighter budgets. Road trips across our scenic nation are becoming the vacation style of choice, blending affordability with the opportunity to explore our vast and varied landscapes. As you plan your summer getaways, it's worth taking a moment to look at a few trends as well, such as sustainable travel. More and more travelers are seeking unique destinations that are not only accessible and budget-friendly, but also gentle on the environment. This year, there is a surge in interest for locales that offer both a retreat and a chance to engage with local cultures in a meaningful way, contributing to local economies while minimizing environmental impacts. Starting with an interview in today's show and over the next few shows, I'll be highlighting some exceptional Canadian travel spots that embody these principles, providing perfect settings for memorable and responsible adventures. Here's what's coming up on today's show. We kick things off as we continue our enlightening 6-part series with the Pay Equity Office. We've already covered topics like pay equity basics, the gender wage gap, pay equity versus equal pay, and the gender pension gap. And in this episode, Katie Philp, Commissioner of Pay Equity Ontario, will help us focus on navigating the system to make it work for you. And Brodie is in with her weekly entertainment roundup, and this week we take a look at the shocking Last Summer, which flips their traditional May-December love affair on its head, and it's not pretty. We'll also chat about the new Apple TV Plus limited series Sunny, starring Rashida Jones, and Anne breaks my heart for a film I had really high hopes for, A Family Affair on Netflix. Charities typically see a surge in donations during the generous holiday season, but summer can be a challenging time for these organizations. Nicole Danesi from Canada Helps joins me to discuss current trends in charitable giving, how to budget for donations, and the unique needs that charities face during the summer months. Prince Edward Island was hailed by Jacques Cartier in 1534 as the fairest land that may possibly be seen, and Rebecca Stanisic, a seasoned family travel writer from Ottawa, wholeheartedly agrees. Rebecca has been visiting PEI annually for years and will share her top tips for making the most of a trip to this picturesque island. Lastly, I'm thrilled to welcome Julie Springer-Aass, formerly of West Ottawa Soccer Club and now a forward for the Ottawa Golden Cleats, a women's 50-plus soccer team. Julie and her team played in the Good Games in Guelph this past weekend, and we'll discuss the importance of women participating in sports after 50, the joys and challenges of competing at this age, and how they prepared for the Good Games. Stay with me for these engaging discussions and more right here on What She Said. Today, we're continuing our 6-part series with the Pay Equity Office, and so far we've explored the how and why of pay equity, the gender wage gap in Ontario, pay equity versus equal pay, and the gender pension gap. Today, we're focusing on navigating the system so that it works for you. Welcome back, Katie, to What She Said.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Ontario has one of the most robust legislative landscapes that protects employees, especially as it relates to pay equity. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. And I know you have a Canadian listener base, so I'll try to speak to the Canadian context a bit later. But just to start, Ontario, as you said, has a really robust legislative landscape. And we have several policy frameworks that actually protect employees from various workplace discrimination. So I know, talking about policy frameworks is really boring and awful, but I think it's really important for, anybody who's working in Ontario, especially working women or racialized individuals or any of the sort of equity seeking groups, to really understand what policy and laws are available for them. So, I'll talk about Ontario, then we can get into the other provinces. But in Ontario, we have the Employment Standards Act, Ontario Human Rights Code, and the Pay Equity Act, and the emerging pay transparency legislation that all work together to really address discrimination in the workplace. And they do it in different ways, which I think is important for people working in Ontario or whatever province they're in to understand the legislation and how they work together. So I'll just say a little bit more about each of the kind of acts here, and then we can get into the nuances across the country. So we've talked about this before, Candice, the difference between equal pay for equal work and equal pay for work of equal value, which is pay equity. So it's the Employment Standards Act that actually covers equal pay for equal work. And this is basically, all employees, regardless of gender or race, need to receive equal pay when doing the same job or what's called substantially the same job. So, if two cooks or two machine operators are doing the same thing or working on the same line, they ought to be getting paid the same. And there shouldn't be any discrimination of pay on the basis of sex. And, the Employment Standard Act goes into a lot of detail about this, but essentially, if people require the same skill, effort, responsibility, or their work is in similar working conditions, they have to be paid the same amount. Of course, there are exceptions. So, things like tenure, educational attainment, pay for performance, those are acceptable differences in pay because we know if you, increase your educational attainment, you might be compensated for that. So there's some exceptions. Human Rights Code is pretty also explicit on protecting employment discrimination, and they've got a ton of criteria that are protected. I'll just go through some of them so your audience knows. But you cannot be discriminated for employment based on, race, ancestry, place of origin, color, ethnic origin, citizenship, creed, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, disability, age, marital status, family status, or record of offenses. So the Human Rights Code's fairly robust. There's a lot of protection there. And then finally, the Pay Equity Act, which you and I have talked about a lot. You can direct your listeners to where to go on a deep dive on that. But, that's also the equal pay for work of equal value, where we really try to get at the differences in pay based on pure gender discrimination. So you can see in Ontario, there's a lot. And of course, finally, pay transparency is emerging as another tool. Now it's a little different. It forces employers to show pay ranges, but it helps individuals who are maybe marginalized or receiving less pay understand what that job is worth.
So how does Ontario's legislative framework for pay equity compare to other provinces across the country?
Well, as we said from the start, Ontario is the most robust, having, 4 or 5 different pieces of legislation that cover this. You'll see, all provinces and territories actually have a human rights code that addresses sex-based discrimination. So wherever you are in Canada, you are covered by discrimination based on sex in terms of the labor market. And this is sort of like the bare minimum and basic, right? We all need a human rights code and this should be covered. In fact, though, it's interesting, Vancouver and Alberta are 2 provinces that only use the Human Rights Code to address gender-based pay discrimination. So all other provinces except Vancouver and Alberta, they have some kind of policies or tools in addition to the Human Rights Code. But Human Rights Code is your basic. Yellowknife, Nunavut, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Newfoundland, of course, Ontario. We have Employment Standard Acts that address equal pay to even more extent. And then, the next level is provinces like Manitoba, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, which have pay equity legislation, which is the equal pay for work of equal value. The challenge with those provinces, though, is that legislation only applies to the public sector And as you know, in Ontario, we've talked about this in Ontario, Quebec, in addition to all of these things, human rights, employment standards, we cover the private sector in terms of pay equity. So there's a lot of policy here and legislation, regulating the labor market to protect employees. So you can really see, though, it varies across the country. And I think the best option for workers is really to educate themselves on what protections are available to them if they think that they're facing sex-based discrimination at work.
So in Ontario, if there are workers that feel they are not receiving equal pay for work of equal value or experiencing pay discrimination, where can they go for help?
It's a good question, and I'll speak to some of the Ontario stuff, but I will put the caveat in that, like, for your listeners across the country, there will likely be analogous organizations in their province that they can find. So for instance, if somebody wants to use the Human Rights Code to address issues of pay discrimination based on any prohibited grounds like gender, race, or sexual orientation, all of those things, there's going to be a similar process. In Ontario, you can go to the Human Rights Tribunal and file an application, and you can submit it online, in mail or person. It's quite accessible. And then there's a timeline that follows. There's usually a mediation, trying to resolve the issue before it goes to a formal hearing with your employer. Then if that doesn't work, there's a hearing, and then the tribunal will make a decision. So, those human rights codes exist in all the provinces. So that's like a basic process that anyone has available to them, is to go to a tribunal in their province and to file a complaint. In Ontario, with the Employment Standard Act, and any other province that has something analogous to the Employment Standard Act, it's going to be a similar process. In Ontario, it's the Ministry of Labor, where actually employees can file employment standards claim form, and you can find that on the Ministry of Labor website. Again, they try to make it very easy. You could do it online, by mail, in person. And it's a really similar process. You gather information, you file your complaint, there's an investigation, and an employment standards officer will determine whether or not the Employment Standards Act has been violated. So there's a way for employees to use and understand their rights under the Employment Standards Act. Same with the Pay Equity Office. We've talked about this before. If somebody feels that they are not getting equal pay for work of equal value, they can contact our office and actually put in an application or file a complaint. And then we have similar process, an investigation, and ideally a resolution. So, these things are complicated processes, and I understand that, employees get very frustrated with government because there's so many, right? Like when you think about in Ontario, you can go understanding the difference between employment standards, Human Rights Code, Pay Equity Act, Pay Transparency, all of the recent Worker for Workers Act. It is confusing. So I think the best thing here is knowledge is power for employees. It's incumbent on the government and the employer to educate their workforce on their rights. But I think it's equally incumbent on the employee to educate themselves on what's out there to defend their rights when it comes to especially pay and pay discrimination, if they feel that that's been happening to them.
Well, I think this is an excellent way to actually wrap up this interview today, is about educating. So the Ontario Pay Equity Office, what resources do you offer to employees and employers to educate themselves and learn more?
I love that you asked that question, because when you come to our website, we intentionally designed it so you can click I work in Ontario or I hire in Ontario, because it's different types of information. Employers have a regulation that they are obligated and obliged to follow. So the resources for employers are very much focused on helping them comply with the act and what they need to do to be in alignment with the law. Whereas the resources for employees or people who work in Ontario, the resources are really designed to help them understand, well, what is pay equity, first of all, how they're entitled to it, and how they can access it if they feel like their rights have been not met. So I'm glad you asked that, because on our website it's very clear. You go payequity.gov.on.ca. That's a long one. You can put it in the show notes. And you can click, I work here, I work in Ontario, I hire in Ontario, to make it very clear, that distinction, and to give the resources that are going to, appeal to that audience.
All right. Wonderful. Katie, thank you so much for joining me today. As always, lots of information for people to sit and think through. And of course, I'm looking forward to our last interview, which is coming up in August. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
It's time for Saturday Night at the Movies with Anne Brodie, and this looks like a really good week. I'm kind of excited about it. Can we talk about Last Summer first?
Yeah, a lot of drama this week. Woo! Yeah, Last Summer is a French film about a woman who is married to a successful attorney who's married to a much older man. And one night lying in bed, she tells him that she's a gerontophile. She loves old people. She loves his loose skin. It's kind of a strange thing to say to somebody, but anyway, he has a son and two adopted girls, and they have a very nice life. Well, he goes away, and she's stuck with Theo, the son, who's a teenager, and he misbehaves a lot because he has certain limitations in his life. So, believe it or not, they begin an affair. And we wonder about her. Is she a pedophile? Well, I think she is. She's in her 40s, early 50s. The kid is a teenager. And it's shocking. And we begin to lose sympathy for her. And I think that's the whole point of the film. You don't really have a lead character who you like in the beginning, who you then are want to stand away from because of their behavior. So this is very unusual. And she kind of behaves monstrously. I mean, she keeps ending it and then she starts it again. She does, he doesn't. And they're caught. People aren't what they seem a lot of the time. And with her sort of disguised as a successful, law-abiding person in a loving marriage, it's shocking, but it's a very good film.
What caught me about this one is it is shocking, obviously, to see this relationship playing out. It's disturbing. It makes you very uncomfortable.
Yes.
These are things, though, conversely, that happen every day with men dating much younger women. We see, right? Like that. Just if this was a movie about May-December romance between a man and a woman, we wouldn't even be having this
Wouldn't bat
conversation.
an eyelash, right?
Exactly. Like it.
Yeah.
If it's this disturbing watching it with a woman and a young man, it should be as disturbing to us to see this playing out with an older man and a younger woman. So,
we keep seeing elderly men on their deathbeds married to these young sort of cheerleader types. I don't get it. Well,
it's crazy.
But wow. Whew.
All right. Let's talk about Sunny. I don't know why, but it seems so like I'm really drawn to it. I think it looks excellent.
It is very good. It's really disturbing and dramatic. Rashida Jones is a woman, an American living in Japan, and her husband has just died, and he was a worker in an AI company. And one of the things that the company did for her on his death as comfort is give her a robot named Sunny, and she was horrified. She's totally against, unreality as reality. But she's feeling a little fragile, and she kind of gives way eventually to Sunny, who's trying really hard to be her friend and her supporter. Well, then she realizes that she's being surveilled by the company, and she goes and breaks in, and she begins to wonder that even her mother-in-law might be AI by now. It's horrifying to us who are nervous about AI in the future. So, and then she becomes friends with Sonny the robot. So, weird. She goes in search of a dark manual that her husband wrote about AI, and very complex. It's an emotional thriller. It's a warning. There is so much going on in this film that and it's a bit of a head scratcher at times, but the threat is so real to her, and it's personified in the AI that she's welcomed into her home and other means. So it's a series that it bears watching for sure.
Yeah, I think this one's going to leave people's brains hurting. Just
Yes,
watching
you
the
said
part
it.
that I saw, I thought, oh man, that's going to mess with your head, because there's a whole swath of people out there right now who genuinely believe that we are AI and we are the
What?
AI who is now creating AI. Like, it is just, it hurts your brain when you start to go down these wormholes. And so this movie sort of touches on those things, I think. So I think it's going to be excellent. So it's not a movie. It's a series, right? It's a 10-part
series on
series
Apple.
on Apple. All right. Excellent. Yeah. All right, Anne, listen, I'm going to tell you, please tell me that A Family Affair is good, because I am so invested in this one. I
can't say that, Candace.
Oh,
I can't say that.
You're going to make me cry.
It's trite. It's dumb. And I shouldn't say these things, and, forgive me, everybody, but two of the leads have had such extensive facial surgery, I couldn't even focus on the film.
Oh, so is Zac Efron and Nicole Kidman, right? Is that who you're talking about?
I guess I'll say that, yes.
Yeah. All right. Why not? I mean,
honestly, it is just dumb. However, there is a bright light in it, and that is Joey King, who plays Nicole Kidman's daughter. Now, she works for this Hollywood movie star played by Efron. Efron and her mother begin an affair. So it's another one of these reverse May Decembers.
Right.
But I found it very hard to watch. Let me know what you think. It's very popular on Netflix.
It's on Netflix.
Yeah.
So I don't know why, but I mean, well, I do know why. I love these escapism movies, so, and shows like Bridgerton and Emily Goes to Paris and Emily in Paris,
Oh, I love Emily in Paris. That's something I do love. But it's not really escapism. It just makes you mad so much because it's so trite.
All right.
But, go ahead. Let me know for sure.
I'm not encouraged, Anne, by this glowing review you're giving.
Well,
all right. Well, I may, if I'm really, really bored one time, and I'll let you know. All right. Quickly, you've got a film festival you want to talk about and let everybody know about.
Yes, up on Manitoulin Island. It's the 7th annual Weegushk International Film Festival by Shirley Chichu. And it's incredible. She's even having a tribute to the Tragically Hip, because they were so invested in Indigenous issues. So it's going to be great. It is July 11th to 14th, and all the information's on the website.
All right, Anne. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.
I'll see you next week.
Every year, charities benefit significantly from the generous holiday spirit of Canadians, with a substantial portion of annual donations coming in December. However, giving trends have shown concerning shifts, and the summer months often bring challenges for charitable organizations. Today, I'm joined by Nicole Danesi, Senior Manager of Strategic Communications and Brand at Canada Helps, to discuss the current state of giving, how to budget for charitable donations, and the unique needs of charities during the summer. Welcome to What She Said, Nicole.
Thanks for having me.
Can you start by giving us an overview of the key findings from your 2024 giving report?
Yes. So there's a lot to dig into, but it really highlights a couple of concerning trends that Canadians are experiencing when it comes to the demand that they're turning to charities at a heightened rate when it comes to food banks or shelters or other sort of essential needs. But also there's a couple of really interesting trends when it comes to who is giving and the decline in the number of Canadians who are giving. So overall, we've actually seen, unfortunately, a decline in the number of Canadians who are actually making a donation to registered charities. That decline has gone from about 23% in 2010 to 17% in 2021. So it's a bit of a significant drop when it comes to the number of individuals who are actually engaging in charitable giving. But the really interesting thing that our report highlights is the fact that social connectedness and how Canadians are connected to each other is actually playing a really big part in terms of our generosity and our giving behavior. So one of the other key facts that I wanted to highlight is the fact that more than 80% of individuals, of Canadians who said that they have many close friends, oftentimes 6 or more close friends, donated at a much higher rate than individuals who donated or who have fewer connections. So the more close connections that you have, the greater chances that you actually give to registered charities. While if you have a fewer or a tighter, smaller circle of friends or close connections, and that could also include family, your tendency to give often would decrease or is often less.
That's fascinating. I wouldn't have thought that there'd be a connection between those two things, but that is incredibly interesting. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the summer months often pose a challenge for charities with a drop in donations. So how can individuals and families budget their giving to provide consistent support throughout the year?
I love this question because it is all about monthly giving. And one of the things that Canadians are often surprised to learn is that donations, as you sort of alluded to, Candace, decline for the most part in the summer months. Individuals are enjoying the weather, on vacation, spending time with family. And sometimes we forget that charities still need support. And we really see a strong tendency when it comes to giving behaviors and trends during the holiday season, as you previously alluded to. But individuals still need support. I know, for example, my food bank close by to me put out a call that said that individuals, children, that is, students who used to be able to access food programs or breakfast programs in the morning at school, for example, when summer, is in session and they're not in school anymore, they do not have access to those types of services. So we need to sort of keep that in mind. Also, I've also heard anecdotally that shelters also experience, it may be surprising, but actually experience a similar or increased demand in the summer months compared to the cold winter months for various reasons. So it sort of depends on charity to charity. But in terms of budgeting, one of the things that I always love talking about is monthly giving, because it allows not only you to be able to budget for how much you're able to spend on, supporting your favorite charity month after month. It allows you to keep control of that, but it also helps the charity, because the charity, just like your monthly income, comes in and you're able to understand and assess how much money you have to spend every month and how you're going to pay the bills. Charities with that sustained month after month funding are able to do the same. They're able to really rely on that. They're not needing to stress as much about how much money is coming in so we can keep the lights on. They're able to focus their time much more so on programs, which is where their mind should be.
One of the things I found really interesting was that there is a noticeable gap between what Canadians say is important to them and where they actually donate their money. For example, climate change is a top concern, but environmental charities receive very few donations. So why do you think this disconnect exists, and how can it be addressed?
Mm-hmm. It's one of those questions that I have been thinking about ever since we published this report, and that I know I've engaged with many individuals about, how do we close this gap where so many of us have a cause that is really close to our hearts, but why is it that some individuals are not taking action? And this doesn't speak to, all Canadians. There's many individuals who volunteer and go to protests and fundraise and donate, for example. But that climate change, stat that you mentioned is very interesting, because at the end of the day, climate change, it's a theme that we actually really focused on in the Giving Report, because it has such a wide intersection between social justice issues, between poverty, food security, a whole range of topics. There's just a huge intersection. And climate change, whether we like it or not, really will affect everyone. And one of the other things that we highlighted in the report is that there's a large portion of Canadians that actually are anxious about climate change and not knowing where we're headed. We can also talk about the fact that many Canadians are becoming more and more affected by wildfires every year. But I think, Candace, it also has to do with the fact that climate change is such a big problem and it is so overwhelming. And we have to sort of distill it down to what can each of us do. And oftentimes it could be, and I don't mean to make it sound, as easy, like I have all the answers when it comes to it. But one of the things that I would encourage, if you're, specifically focused on climate change as a cause that's close to your heart, look to charities that are on the ground, that are doing that environmental protection work, but also look to charities that are instilling really long-term solution when it comes to policies, that are trying to advocate for policies that can not just, it can stop climate change in its tracks for the most part, in terms of those wider policies that we know that can make a big impact in that sense. But I think it's a reminder that small actions and small acts that we're able to do make a big difference. And I really hope that this report really highlights the fact that we need to close this gap.
It's fascinating to me. And it leads me actually into my next question, because I feel they may be connected a little bit. When we donate to a food bank or we drop food at the grocery store to give to the food bank, we know that impact will be immediate. But we don't always see or know of the impact we're making, especially when it comes to something like climate change, for example, which will take years, obviously, to turn the tide on. So what advice do you have to people to help them see the difference that they can make in their charitable donations?
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting question, because the report actually really speaks to, there's a part in the report at the back that sort of talks to charities directly, to say charities need to make sure that they're communicating their impact to donors, and to Canadians, so that is really front and center, because that was actually one of the reasons why many individuals who previously donated to an environmental charity stopped, because they didn't feel like their impact was making a big difference, which is really concerning. So I think if you are an individual who cares deeply about climate change and ending climate change, I would strongly encourage, and I make this recommendation quite often to anyone who's engaging with charities, reach out to the charity and ask them questions. 9 times out of 10, I bet you every single one of them will be thrilled to talk to you about all the different creative ways that they are trying to tackle this problem, both a proactive and reactive approach, because with an issue like climate change, you almost need to have sort of both of those strategies playing at the same time. But have those conversations, reach out to them, and see how there could potentially be other ways that you can support, whether it's planting trees, cleaning up your park that's in your neighborhood, for example. There's so many different ways.
All right, wonderful. We don't have a lot of time left. We have about 30 seconds, but any advice you can give to Canadians right now to help them alleviate this summer drought, as it were, and support charities in their critical work?
Mm-hmm. I would really encourage Canadians to go visit CanadaHelps.org. We list all 85,000 registered Canadian charities, and these are registered organizations that are registered with the Canada Revenue Agency. And just remember that every single action that we all engage with does make a difference. And, pick a cause that you care about and really try to find targeted ways of addressing that cause in whichever way that you're able to, whether it's volunteering or fundraising or donating. Enjoy the summer, certainly, but just remember that also, unfortunately, demand is still quite high when it comes to these organizations that are on the front lines and doing really hard work.
Thank you, Nicole. This is a timely reminder, I think, as everybody slides into the lazy days, the dog days of summer. It is important to know that there's still a lot of need. So thank you for joining me today. We'll have you back again soon.
Thank you.
In 1534, Jacques Cartier described Prince Edward Island as the fairest land that may possibly be seen. My next guest couldn't agree more. Rebecca Stanisic is an Ottawa-based family travel writer who has been making an annual pilgrimage to PEI with her family for the last several years. She joins me today to share her top tips for visiting the island. Welcome to What She Said, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me.
So what initially drew you and your family to PEI, and what keeps you coming back year after year?
We've been going with the kids since 2011, and they at the time were 4 and 2, and we had some summer vacation time. We knew we wanted to go somewhere. And in 2002, right before we got engaged, right before our life together began, my husband and I went to the island and loved our time there. We didn't return just because, that's life. So when we were thinking about where to go as a family, we thought, okay, let's bring the kids there. We always loved it. It's a great spot for younger children, and it was drivable. So we knew we could do that. And so that's when we began. So since 2011, we've gone every year except for 2 pandemic years that we had to miss, not by choice. And that's what we've been doing.
So for families then who are planning their first trip to PEI, what are some must-see attractions and activities that you would recommend?
One of the first things, because I'm asked often now, we go often enough, and family and friends, and to be honest, with my blog posts on the site, strangers will email me and ask me for tips. But one of the things I try to tell people is don't overplan when you go, because the beauty of PEI is the journey, the exploration, the little gems that you end up finding as a family. And that's what we always found. And over the years, although we had destinations, and certainly when the kids are little and they get up at 5:30 or 6 a.m., by 9 a.m., you're ready to go on a day trip. You're ready to get out. Now that they're teens, now that they're older, we all really enjoy the quiet time at the cottage that we rent. So finding that balance between not being overly programmed is really what I recommend. But when you're going and starting out, there are certain things that, you want to do. Yes, you want to see the beach. Yes, and I always recommend if you can rent a place on water, do that. Yes, you want to go see lighthouses. You want to go into Charlottetown. But a lot of what you're going to do is going to be a little bit just of journey and discovery. And that's what I love about it.
PEI is really known around the world for its stunning natural beauties. Are there favorite outdoor spots on the island that you would recommend?
Yes. So Greenwich, which is the national park, has a boardwalk walking area. There's a shorter walking area and then a longer one. But when we would take the kids when they were younger, we would go through, it kind of felt like we used to joke with them that it felt almost like a video game, because you would go through forest and then over marsh and field, and then you'd hit this boardwalk and then end up at these gorgeous dunes at the water. So there was all these levels that we would discover. So Greenwich is one that I recommend for sure.
And on your blog, Bit of Mom Sense, you mention a lot about the local food scene. So what are some of the culinary highlights that visitors shouldn't miss?
One of the first years that we went, I did Operation Eat Lobster Every Day. My goal was something
This is a good goal in life. This is a good goal in life.
It was perfect. And we, I think, hit it, whether it was chowder or lobster rolls, eat a lot of lobster rolls. So you don't have to be a seafood lover to appreciate the food scene on PEI. I will tell people that all the time. One of my kids was a vegetarian for many, many years in our visiting. They're now a pescatarian. So it's, more seafood now, but there's lots of food for everyone. For those who are seafood lovers, it's hard not to, lean into the lobster roll scene and the lobster scallops, mussels, tons of things. The food, the restaurants, the options are so vast because you can have a really fancy sit down meal that's delicious and wonderful, or you can have something that's quick and takeout and, just as enjoyable if you're going to picnic or eat it at the cottage. So a few places that I recommend is Richard's, which is a few different locations, but the one we go to is Victoria by the Sea, a quaint little seaside town. In Victoria as well is the Lobster Barn. They have a cute little patio, really great lobster roll. We always love visiting there. We haven't gone the past couple of years just because of timing, and we were just talking about we have to head back there. If you are in Charlottetown, there's a few different places that you can go to, certainly by the wharf. There's in Borden, right across the bridge, is a place called the Lone Oak, which has a very casual bar pub vibe, but a lot of outdoor seating. And we always love doing that because it's just really nice. That's usually how we kick off our entry on the island. There's a company called the Hand Pie Company that makes hand pies to take, eat for lunch or take home to the cottage. Definitely recommend those. Get the breakfast hand pie if you go. And then, of course, there's Cow's ice cream, which is fairly iconic in this country. And we definitely indulge in that frequently on our visits.
What tips do you have for families then to make the most of their PEI vacation while keeping everyone happy and entertained?
I really believe in family travel in general is to include the kids right from the start at all ages. So sure, when they're really little, they may not understand the concept of agendas and timelines and having, you're going to dictate the days. But if they have interests, lean into that. So our eldest was really into history. We often would go and find places that had that historical take. And certainly Charlottetown was really great for that. And various, the lighthouses and the stories that you could find. Our youngest is a big swimmer, loves the beach. So we'd make sure we built in a lot of time for that enjoyment, to really hit on things that all of us love. I love sitting around the cottage reading and playing and visiting. So I think all of us do that though. We all enjoy that. So involving the kids, showing them the map, showing them the options, asking them, what did you love, this year? And then we build that into our following trips. Last year, we went as a family to see the beach goats, which is a place you can visit with little goats on the water. That was a must do again this year for both my kids. So we're doing that again. So I think involve the kids right from the start and you'll end up with a richer experience because they'll be excited to go and try and then, debrief and do it again.
Can you share, any hidden gems or lesser known spots on the island that are worth exploring?
It's funny because we've been going for so long that we've definitely seen the growth of the visitors every year. It feels like it gets a little bit busier. So, to find those hidden gems, and actually because we stay so much at the cottage and we kind of go to our favorite places for the 2 weeks we're there and then, don't always explore like we used to in the beginning. So where would I recommend that's a hidden gem? If you're looking at beaches, everyone thinks about Cavendish and that touristy area. We often would go instead to North Rustico, which is it's actually growing now, but at the time it was much smaller. Or we would go east to Panmure Island. And at the time when we used to do that, it was quieter and not as busy. If there's a touristy place, you can always find something that's just a little bit not quite the touristy go-to right now, although in a couple of years it may change.
Any advice you would give to someone planning their first trip to PEI to ensure they have a memorable and enjoyable experience?
I always say start planning now and whatever time of year it is. I think part of the fun is the planning because you're researching, you're looking. The great thing with PEI is wherever you end up staying as your home base, so much is within distance. So the reality is, like most trips, you can't do everything. right? So you just kind of have to prioritize what do we have to do that makes this a rewarding trip? And how do we balance that with that downtime, with the cottage time? We always rent a cottage. People ask me about where to stay. Start with what kind of beach you want. So if you stay south, you'll have that traditional red sand beach with very extreme tides. And that means that you'll have maybe shallower water and walking space when the tide is out. It won't be traditional swimming. We swim in it, but it won't be the traditional beach where you're right at sand and water all day. If you prefer a traditional beach, then look more north or look somewhere that has that open water concept. And then just kind of, enjoy the experience and plan for that. Plan for food, plan for quiet time. And it's the rejuvenation. Like we go back year after year because we feel the nostalgia, but we also feel a reset there. There's just something so calming for all of us. And that's, I think, partly why we love it. So enjoy that.
Well, the way you've described this, I'm positive that anybody who visits for the first time, it will not be their last time. So thank you for joining me today. You've really sold PEI to me anyway. So if people have questions though or want to know more, where can they connect with you?
Definitely. I have some posts and you can always connect with me at bitofmomsense.com. At bitofmomsense is my Instagram handle. I will be sharing photos and video from my trip this year again there. But you definitely can ask me questions there as well. And I love to chat.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Today, I'm excited to be joined by Julie Springer-Aass, formerly Director at Large at West Ottawa Soccer Club and a forward for the Ottawa Golden Cleats, a women's 50-plus soccer team. Julie and her team will be participating in the Good Games in Guelph on July 6th and 7th. Today, we'll be discussing the significance of women in sport after 50, the joys and challenges of competing at this age, and the team's upcoming participation in the Good Games. Welcome to What She Said, Julie.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Can you tell me a little bit, because you've said that being part of the Golden Cleats is one of the best things in your life. So can you tell us more about how sports have impacted your life, especially now at this stage?
Yeah, well, I can definitely say that sports has always been a part of my life. And I've been doing jogging, playing with friends, squash since I was young. But I think I got to a point after having kids and working for many years where I started to feel that sports, it's really my medicine. It's what keeps me going every day. And when I was lucky enough at the age of 50 to be recruited by one of my teammates to join the Ottawa Golden Cleats, I think it took on a whole new level. It was not just the medicine, but it was like the joy that I really looked forward to every day. Like when I get a chance to play with I probably play about 3 or 4 times a week. And whenever I go out to play soccer, I feel really young again. It's a great feeling.
And many of your teammates started playing soccer much later in life, some even in their mid-40s. So what do you think motivates women to start or continue being active in sports at this age, especially at the competitive level?
Yeah, it's funny. I always think about my teammates before I think about me. They're wonderful, wonderful people. And I know we've had conversations about that. And in a lot of cases, some of my friends on the team, they started playing to stay in shape. Like as we get older, we sort of have a decision to, sit around a little bit more than we would otherwise. Socialize, yes. But I think we all sort of got on board with socializing being an active part of our lives. So we still like to socialize, but we like to bring the soccer in the sport as well. And I think it makes us all feel a lot stronger and better. We all say motion is a lotion. So we just keep going.
And I was quite impressed to read that your team has several cancer survivors. So how has that experience of playing soccer together contributed to your teammates' recovery and their overall well-being?
Well, it's really interesting. I think when we go to these tournaments, it becomes like you start to learn more and more about people from all over the world. And Yes, some of my friends are cancer survivors, and many of the other women that we've met from across the globe are cancer survivors. So it just makes, it makes everything that much more precious. And one of my close friends on the team, she came back, she was off for more than a year with her treatments, and she came back, and I think you're better than ever, and you're more appreciative of everything you get a chance to do again.
Somebody's listening right now and they're thinking, I should really get back into sports. So what advice would you give to women over 50 who are hesitant about getting involved in sports or physical activities because maybe they've been out for so long or they've maybe never done that sport?
We don't have to have this expectation that we're going to look the way we did when we were 16 or the way we think you should look when you're playing a sport, because it feels just as good no matter what the pace is. I know that we probably don't move as rapidly as our kids. Well, that's guaranteed, but I think we get the same enjoyment from it.
And the Good Game celebrates athletes of all ages and backgrounds. So how important do you think it is to have these inclusive events like this that encourage participation regardless of age or skill level?
Yeah, it's extremely important. I think we all need that. We all need that energy. We all need that joy. Even kids, that are young and competitive, they go through a period where maybe they're not doing as much on the competitive level, and they need this just as much as we do. And for people at, at my age and beyond, I think we still all need that camaraderie. We're all just little kids dressed up in big people's clothing, right? We just, we all have that need, I think. And, don't be afraid. I mean, there's nothing to lose.
And I mean, you're going obviously as a participant, but is there an event that you're really looking forward to as a spectator?
It's always great to see former Olympians. So I never got to that level. I played at a reasonably high level in squash when I was young, but never to the level of the Olympics. And it's always great to see, I think there's a Christina May that's playing beach volleyball. I think there's going to be some phenomenal athletes. And I have that appreciation whenever I see the Olympics or whenever I see sports. So I'm looking forward to definitely the beach volleyball. And I know there's a lot of pickleball players, and I've got a lot of friends that play pickleball. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
So what message do you hope to convey then by participating in the Good Games and promoting the involvement of women in sports after 50?
So to be honest, I'm not that deep, but I like the idea of normalizing sport, normalizing what we do, which is just staying active, and recognizing that it's the same for all of us. We all need it, So let's make it just a normal part of staying young, getting old, just living.
Well, I think it's worth noting that you are being a role model as well for younger children, because a lot of young girls, especially at around the age of 12, drop completely out of sports. And I think that may be the experience probably for a lot of members on your team, even who may have got out at a young age and then have come back in much older. So you really are role modeling as well, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to believe that's the case. I think all of us have kids, younger or older. And I think when I get up every day, I do hope that I do something that my kids look up to and appreciate. So if this can be a little bit of that, then I would be happy.
Well, I'm thrilled that the Golden Cleats will be representing Ottawa in Guelph, my hometown. So this is great news. So where can people find out more about the Good Games, maybe get tickets and come watch you play?
Yeah, anybody that's interested can check out the website, thegood.games. And we hope to see you there.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today, Julie.
Thank you, Candace. It's been a pleasure.
If today's podcast resonated with you, spread the word and share the inspiration. Don't forget to hit subscribe on What She Said across your favorite podcast platforms. Crave more? Join my vibrant community by signing up for my newsletter at whatshesaidtalk.com, and let's get social on Facebook, Instagram, and X at What She Said Talk. Dive into my world a little deeper on TikTok and Threads at Candace Said. And for those who love the airwaves, catch me weekly on 105.9 The Region, Blast the Radio, and 107.7 Pulse FM. Until next time, keep making waves and remember, your voice matters.
Hi, I'm Steve Yerko.
And I'm Tara Sands. Now available from Maji Media is our new podcast, 4 Kids Flashback. 4 Kids is the company who brought you the English dub of Pokemon in the late 90s and so many other shows like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Shaman King, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Kirby, the infamous One Piece dub, and so many more.
We'll be talking to the people who worked at 4 Kids. Actors, directors, writers, editors, producers, engineers, you get the point. And hopefully get the answers to questions both you and I have about the company.
I actually worked there as a voice actor on some of the shows.
And I was a kid watching the shows and remember way more than Tara does.
And thank God for that. Steve is actually a professional storyboard artist, which gives some really unique insights into anime and animation. Subscribe today wherever you get your podcasts. That's the number 4 Kids Flashback.
What happens when we play outside? We become healthier, both mentally and physically. We become more creative and more focused. We connect with nature, each other, and ourselves. Let's Take This Outside, a new podcast hosted by me, Marianne Iveson, an aspiring outdoor athlete and nature lover. I speak to athletes, outdoor professionals, and scientists about their connection to nature, how it affects their performance, and everyday life. Let's Take This Outside, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, and at letstakethisoutside.ca.
Another Sound Off Media Company podcast.